All right, today we're documenting something pretty unique, the market DNA method. We're going to follow a specific S&P 500 cycle, step by step, just to show how it's documented. So let's jump right in. So what you're looking at here is a proprietary geometric system. Think of what we're doing today as simply walking through a public case study. The goal is just to observe how this method is applied in a real-world scenario. So what makes this different? Well, it kind of throws out all the usual tools. We're not talking about technical analysis, fundamental analysis, or any quantitative indicators. Nope. This is purely about following a set of predefined visual rules. That's it. Here's a quick roadmap of what we'll cover. First, a quick overview of the method as it applies to this cycle. Then we'll dive into the specific phases we observed. After that, we'll check in on the cycle's current status. And finally, we'll wrap up with some really important disclaimers. All right, let's get into our first section, the market DNA method. We're just going to break down the core components we're looking at for this particular S&P 500 cycle. Let's see what's on the chart. Okay, so obviously we're looking at the S&P 500 index. This specific cycle has an ID SP500-53. Now, here's where it gets interesting right off the bat. The observed path went from phase 1 and jumped straight to phase 3. The shapes you see making up the structure are called Triangle 1, Triangle 2, Triangle 3, the trapezoid, and the mirror delay line. Okay, let's start at the beginning with phase 1, the entry and plan. This is where the whole thing kicked off. It's where the initial setup and all the key parameters were defined for this cycle. So check out this chart from March 9th, 2026. You can see right there, the S&P 500 price touched a key point labeled M. According to the method, M is the primary entry level. That contact is what officially started the clock on phase 1 of this documented cycle. Now, the plan laid out in phase 1 actually had two potential entry points. The main one was level M, which we just saw get triggered. But there was also a backup, a secondary entry at level PC. You can think of this PC level as a built-in piece of the risk management plan for the cycle. To make it tangible, the plan was modeled on a hypothetical $100,000 portfolio. The number one rule? A max allowed drawdown of 5%. That means if losses hit $5,000, the strategy gets reevaluated. You can also see the other key parameters that were defined right from the start, like that 80-day time duration for the shape called the trapezoid. So you might be asking, how exactly are the trade sizes determined in this system? Well, it's very specific, and I'm going to read this rule exactly as it's written. Both trade sizes are calculated using the hypothetical capital, the investor's maximum allowed drawdown, the third triangle domain percentage, the risk coefficient, and the contract size. The plan also laid out three potential targets. Target 2, called Apex N, was considered a safe exit, with an estimated return of about 4.75%. Target 3, the full exit, was aiming higher, for the top of that trapezoid shape. This table just shows the different profit scenarios that were calculated way back in phase 1. So that was the plan. Now let's see what the market actually did. This is where things got interesting because the cycle jumped right to what the system calls phase 3. This is an N-level event, which means the price hit one of those key predefined targets. And this comparison tells the story perfectly. On the left, you've got our starting point, the price hitting entry-level M. Then look to the right. The S&P 500 rallied, and the price moved all the way up to that target we just mentioned, Apex N. According to the model, the moment it touched that target, phase 3 was complete. And it happened fast. Literally the next day, on March 10th, the price hit $6,844. The really unusual thing here is that phase 3 completed before phase 2 even had a chance to occur. Apparently, the system allows for this alternate path, and that's exactly what we saw documented here. And because the market moved up so quickly from that first entry point, well, that secondary safety net entry at P was never triggered. It simply wasn't needed for this particular cycle. So phase 3 is in the books. Where does that leave the cycle right now? Let's take a look at the current status. And that brings us to the big question on the table. Will the cycle now go back and complete phase 2? Remember, phase 3 happened out of sequence, so that mirror line event from phase 2 could theoretically still be in play. Now, it's so important to be clear. This isn't about making a prediction. The method is all about observation and procedure. So the next step is simply to watch the market and document whatever happens next according to the system's rules. Okay, and before we finish, we absolutely have to cover some important disclaimers. This is a really crucial part of understanding the context of everything we've just looked at. So let's be crystal clear. This is not financial advice. This is a public case study for documentation and verification purposes only. The rules of this particular model prohibit using leverage above 10 and investing essential funds. And at the end of the day, any and all risk management is up to the individual user. Thanks for watching this documentation of the market DNA method.